Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to 3 News Now. It's Tuesday, February 23rd. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for joining me for the top stories from WKYC.com and our WKYC app. Today, Governor Mike DeWine and the First Lady of Ohio, Fran, received their second doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, so now fully vaccinated with both their first and second dose. Under the state's current guidelines, Governor DeWine and Fran became eligible to receive the vaccine earlier this month as Ohioans over the age of 70. Right now, the state is currently vaccinating Ohioans who are age 65 and older, and also people with certain medical conditions. We have a full breakdown of all of that on WKYC.com, but again, the state holding steady right now with Ohioans 65 and older, and again, those certain medical conditions. We've got all of that linked at WKYC.com/vaccine if you want any information about getting a vaccine as we wait for that central vaccination system to really get going here in Ohio. Also related to COVID-19, there are 2 more Ohio bars who have received suspensions from the Ohio Liquor Control Commission for violating the state's COVID-19 protocols. 2 of them here in Northeast Ohio. The first one, Flood's Urban Seafood Lounge in Warrensville Heights. Now, this one is facing some pretty steep suspensions. 2 suspensions that it's possible for them to pay a fee and avoid the suspension, but 1 pretty hefty suspension that they are not being given the option of paying a fee to avoid. The first suspension would be a 10-day suspension that would begin on March 22nd. They have the option to pay $1,000 to forgo that suspension. Another suspension would be a 15-day suspension that would begin on April 1st with an option of paying $3,000 to avoid that suspension. But here's the big one, a 120-day suspension beginning on April 16th at noon, and this was for a violation that took place on December 14th. Now, there's no option to pay a fine to avoid that one. So if Floods wants to try and avoid that suspension, they will have to appeal that decision from the Ohio Liquor Control Commission. And the other bar, the Velvet Dog, right here in downtown Cleveland, now they're facing 2 suspensions for 2 violations that happened in December. There was a disorderly violation on December 12th, so a 5-day suspension for that beginning March 22nd. The Velvet Dog can pay $1,000 to avoid that suspension, and then a second disorderly violation on December 31st. So there's a 10-day suspension there from the Ohio Liquor Control Commission. That would begin on March 27th. The Velvet Dog can pay $2,000 to avoid that suspension. Now, remember, the Barley House on West 6th Street, right across from the Velvet Dog here in downtown Cleveland, is facing revocation of its liquor license, and that could take effect on March 24th. The owners do say they plan to appeal that, but if they're not successful, that could take effect on March 24th. Now let's take a look at the COVID-19 numbers across the globe, across the U.S. and here in Ohio. First up, let's look at the worldwide numbers. These numbers come from Johns Hopkins University. Across the globe, the number of reported COVID cases is now at 111,913,701. The total number of deaths is at 2,479,672. And here in the U.S., with 4% of the global population, we lead the percentage of cases and the percentage of deaths by wide margins. We have 25.2% of the cases and 20.2% of the COVID-19 reported deaths. In the U.S., the total number of reported cases is now at 28,212,187. And yesterday afternoon, the U.S. did cross the threshold of 500,000 COVID-19 deaths. That's 500,000 people, and that total number as of now is 501,315. So President Joe Biden did order flags on federal property to be flown at half staff for 5 days in honor of the more than 500,000 now people who have lost their lives in the U.S. related to COVID-19. Here in the state of Ohio, the Ohio Department of Health's numbers are now in for today for COVID-19. We've seen 2,775 new reported cases. That's up significantly from yesterday. Remember, though, we do usually see a lower number on Mondays because of less testing and less reporting over the weekends. Now, in the last 24 hours, we've also seen 94 new reported deaths related to COVID-19. That's also up from yesterday. Taking a look at the number of tests being done and the percentage that are coming back positive, on Sunday there were about 15,400 or so COVID tests done, and 5.1% of those came back positive, so about 780, 790 positives happening there, and the 7-day average is at 5% for tests coming back positive. We've seen 159 new hospitalizations in the last 24 hours related to COVID. That number is up from yesterday, but the number of people in the hospital continues to go down. Today, that number is 1,359. For that, we are thankful. And of those people, the number being treated in the ICU has also gone down. That number is 366. And we've seen 29 new ICU admissions in the last 24 hours. Here in Ohio, the total number of Ohioans who have completed the vaccination process is now at about 707,000. That's just over 6% of our Ohio population, with about 32,000 new people completing that COVID vaccine in the last 24 hours. And the number of people who have started the vaccination process is at 1,475,000. So that's about 12.6% of our population here in Ohio. Now, we know Governor DeWine has made it a big priority for people to get kids back into classrooms. Meijer is helping out in that regard in terms of providing medical care for those students. Meijer is donating another $2 million to the Cleveland Clinic Children's Healthcare Program to provide care to Northeast Ohio students. What this will do is it will expand the Cleveland Clinic Children's school-based healthcare program. Now, according to a press release, this donation will be used to buy a second mobile healthcare unit that'll travel between school districts in Northeast Ohio. The clinic says that this unit is used to operate as a full-service pediatric office for children around the region. You can get physical examinations done there, treat illnesses, provide immunizations to students, and that's regardless of whether a student has health insurance as well. Dr. Rupa Thakur, who is a pediatrician and medical director of the Cleveland Clinic Children's School-Based Healthcare Program, said this: missing school due to health concerns or not assessing care because you don't want to miss school can disrupt a child's long-term health and development. Our program aims to help combat this by offering pediatric healthcare services while also ensuring kids stay in school and parents don't miss work for an office visit. So the clinic, they're really trying to take away the barriers that might have these students getting the health care that they need. The clinic says that during the 2019-2020 school year, the first mobile unit served nearly 2,000 students. And remember, that's a school year that was interrupted because there was a lot of changes that happened in March when we realized COVID-19 had hit here in Ohio. Speaking of interruptions last year, we know that the Tribe had a shortened season because of COVID-19, and now Francisco Lindor is talking about what happened at the end of the season when his performance seemed to fall off. Now he is with the New York Mets, and in an interview from spring training, he talked about how he wasn't putting the work in the weight room and how that really showed in the last week of the season. This has a lot of people upset because it sounds like he's saying here that he kind of phoned it in, maybe had one foot already out the door when there were still conversations happening about what was going to happen with his future here in Cleveland. Definitely not something you want to hear from somebody who was a big part of that franchise. Here's what Frankie Lindor said. He said, last year was a very difficult year for a lot of people. I was blessed to be able to play every game, stay healthy, stay on the field. My routine was a little different last year. I didn't give my best in the weight room, and that showed the last week of the season. I got tired. 60 games, I was playing well. I was playing fine. I played well. It was just that last week. I didn't get my couple hits, and it went down his hitting. He talked about how his batting average went down a little bit. He said he didn't know exactly what he hit last year, but whatever it was, it wasn't good. And he said, I didn't give my best in the weight room. It showed the last week. That's pretty much what it comes to last year's season. He says he does the same thing every off season. He works hard to improve his body, to try to get better and get stronger, to maintain areas of his game. And then he said, I thought last year went well. It was just that last week, and there's nothing I can do in the off season to fix that last week. It's doing it during the season this year to make sure that stretch doesn't happen. Not what you want to hear from Frankie Lindor, but being candid about how he felt the end of the season went last year and why, and now he's with the New York Mets. One more story here before you go. I had the opportunity to talk with Cleveland native Danny Kravitz. He's one of the screenwriters for The Marksman, starring Liam Neeson. Now, this is an action film, but it's more than just an action film. It really deals with the political undertones of U.S. immigration. In the story, Neeson's character, Jim Hansen, he's initially pretty indifferent when he sees a mother and a son. The son's name is Miguel, played by Jacob Perez, trying to enter the U.S. illegally on his land. And his main concern, he tells them, is that they're not going to make it across his land. They're going to get dehydrated, and he's going to have to find them and then deal with that. Well, then a switch sort of flips for him, and all of a sudden he's very concerned about the U.S. immigration system and the difficulty of seeking asylum because he sees these people, these members of a drug cartel, come up to the gate, the fence where they entered his property, and try and kill them. So the switch flips for him, and it's really complicated for him by the fact that his stepdaughter, Sarah, who is played by Catherine Winnick, actually works for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. So we see all of that play out. We see all of the action moments you want to see in a Liam Neeson movie, and we also see some tender moments between him and the character of Miguel, played by Jacob Perez. And I got to talk with Kravitz about it. This is his first major feature film screenwriting credit, and he really hit it out of the park with #1 on this one. Distributed by Open Road Films, again, starring Liam Neeson. It was at the top of the box office for its first 2 weeks. It's continued to be in the top 5 through 5 weeks in theaters. It's still in theaters right now. You can check it out. And for our full conversation, including what it was like to be on set here in Cleveland, because the movie was shot here in Cleveland, in Lorain and Portage County and Chardon. For all of that, check that on WKYC.com. We'll also have a segment on it in the 5 o'clock show today, so you can see that on What's New. And then, of course, I'll have your trending stories in the Clicking in Cleveland segment in the second half hour of that show. That's it for your 3 News Now update for Tuesday, February 23rd. I'll see you on What's New here shortly. Between now and then, everyone have a great afternoon. Stay safe and be well, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for more 3 News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney.